Welcome to Global Connections on ThinkTech Hawaii. I'm your host, Jay Fidell. Today we'll talk about who are the weapons suppliers of today's troubled world. What are the implications of their transactions? Our guest for the show is Roopmati Khandekar, geopolitical analyst on ThinkTech. Welcome to the show, Roopmati.
Hello, Ajay. Thank you for having me on your show. Always a pleasure. Yeah.
You know, the weapons trade is always below the surface, but we need to learn what we can. And if we are to understand the nations, players, and conflicts that may benefit by the sale of these weapons, or that may be attacked by the sale of these weapons, we need to do that. The more weapons that are in circulation, the more likely we will have wars. I think that's a basic premise. Given the power and lethality of modern weapons with modern technology, these sales have been increasing and have increasing geopolitical effect. So, Ramadi, let's talk first about Ukraine's attack only a few days ago with homemade, I should say, indigenous drones that they managed to disseminate all over Russia. What a fabulous attack that was. Can you talk about it? And can you talk about the weapons?
Yeah, Jay. So Ukraine's attack on the Russian fleet aviation capability of Russia wiped out, one third capability wiped out. And Jay, it was a attack which was 1.5 years in the making. And this was these small drones. So we know that Russia has this S-400 system of a defense system, and they had to have these small drones which would escape this defense capability. And so, Jay, they have taken these small drones into on the top of in container trucks, planted them close to the airport, and targeted almost 7 airports and damaging around more than $7 billion of Russian aviation nuclear capable aircraft with these low cost drones, Jay. So it was a stunner in its implementation. And Jay, we understand that um, weapons play such a big role that you had these small drones destroying these. Russia is known for its Generation 5 aircraft. And so when you saw this filmed and telecast to the world, it makes a big impact to how much military capability and how much weapons play a role in any conflict. And this is what Ukraine is talking about. If you give them better weapons, showed it that with small drones they can cause damage to the Russian giant. So this was what happened in this week, Jay, and really shook the entire global politics. So we are waiting for Putin's revenge on this, and it's going to be big.
He's already started doing that with his own drone attacks. But I think your description of that suggests that things are changing. Well, things are always changing, aren't they? And instead of buying these drones from outside, from another country, certainly not the U.S. The U.S. either A, doesn't have them, or B, doesn't want to sell them to or give them to Ukraine right now, given the Trump position on Ukraine. You got to give them credit for building these drones themselves. They are extraordinary in terms of the way they can collaborate and the way they can use technology. However, I think the big change is they didn't have all the parts themselves. They had to get the parts from somewhere else. My guess, it's a guess, is that they got the parts from other countries in Europe, and the countries that might have supplied them, Germany, France, maybe the UK. I don't think other countries might have supplied them, not as likely. And with those parts, they could build these drones. You got to give them credit for being able to assemble them. But what we have here is a change in the paradigm. Instead of buying the drones elsewhere, which I think Russia tries to do, like from Iran, they were buying the parts and making the drones themselves. And my guess is they didn't have to buy many parts because they're so clever that they were probably fabricating a lot of the parts themselves. It's really a change, isn't it? It's not the same thing as one country selling weapons or giving weapons as an arms dealer to another. It's sort of an indigenous effort. Don't you think this reflects a change in circumstances?
Yeah, Jay, because Ukraine has given so much importance to this drone technology. They have a drone commander, commander of drones. It's a position officially in the army for Ukraine. So that's the importance of drones in today's modern warfare, Jay. And it's an industry, the arms industry, where you have defense, military, arms trade, weapons, munitions, weapons, platforms, communication systems, all these being sold under. So it's a huge industry which dominates the world system. And so, Jay, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institution, SIPRI, puts global military expenditure at around $2.4 trillion. So imagine the uh, capacity of the countries to buy and sell. So we have five largest arms exporters being the United States, France, Russia, China, and Germany in that order. And you have the buyers being India having 15% of the global share. Then comes Saudi Arabia, China, UAE, and Pakistan with 5% of the market share. So, Jay, you see, there is a demand supply algorithm going on for weapons, and it's sustained and it is in demand because of these conflicts. It's become that, you get into this that if there's a war, you need weapons. If there are weapons, you have a war. So, this kind of rut that they're stuck in. And Jay, the United States is the largest arms exporter in 2023-24, having 43% of the global share. So that dominates foreign policy um, inclinations for Donald Trump. Like we saw, his Saudi Arabian trip was just about sale of weapons. The $1 trillion deal for weapons was the highlight of his trip. So, Jay, what we see is that there is um, there's a saying that if you are more powerful, you can have a say in world politics. If you're not powerful, you cannot have a domination, or you cannot have a standing in world politics. And that is the reason why this arms race is on, Jay, because you remember the arms race was a good a tenet of the Cold War era, in which you had just Russia and China, Russia and US vying for arms. But when the countries know that they need, first they start as self defense, then they start for sharpening their own capability, and third is when they can be the offender good enough to protect and to sustain their domination in that region or maybe in the world. So military capability is directly proportional to your standing in global politics today. So that is why the importance of this industry is so high.
Yeah, it's an extension of a foreign policy.
True.
It creates foreign policy, and foreign policy creates the weapons trade. You're right. In the Cold War, there were only a couple of countries involved: the U.S. and Russia. China wasn't a player at the time. None of the countries in Europe were players. They were just tagging along behind the U.S. in NATO, and NATO was, taking weapons from the U.S. But all that has changed, and we haven't really followed it. I mean, for example, we learned that Iran is very good at making drones and selling drones. It's a business, and they develop a worldwide business of selling these weapons. Likewise, China is selling and giving away weapons all over the world.
Mm.
So even in the past few years, it hasn't been 10 years, maybe less, we find there's a whole network of brokers and supply chains moving weapons around the world. Some are better, some are not as good. But the fact is that if you don't have weapons, you will spend the money, and you will buy weapons or somehow acquire weapons from the countries who are willing to give them to you. So for the US, if Trump likes a given country, he's going to sell weapons to them or give weapons to them. If he doesn't like the country, he's not. It's an extension of foreign policy. And as we know, in fact, there was a podcast I listened to this morning. What is Trump's foreign policy? Is who he likes on a given Tuesday morning and who he doesn't like. There's no cohesive quality to it. And Marco Rubio is not establishing that policy. Congress is not establishing that policy. It's Trump who's establishing that policy. I mean, this is a very dangerous business to give powerful, lethal weapons of mass destruction, if you will, to countries based on your personal relationships and personal preferences. And that has also changed in the world today. The autocrats do it for one kind of reason, the democracies do it for another kind of reason. But let me ask you about the technology. These weapons are obviously more lethal than weapons before. There was a 60-minute segment not too long ago, which is actually on YouTube right now, showing how you could use AI and have autonomous fighter planes, autonomous submarines, all kinds of sophisticated robots and other weapons for the battlefield. Drones, of course, goes without saying. And we are manufacturing them. We're designing the software for them, and we are trying to get to the top of the world competition, which we're already at with 43% of all the exports in the world, weapons exports. And so, I wonder. Oh, and yes, and Trump is looking for in his big, beautiful, ridiculous bill. He's looking for 4 trillion extra dollars, and a good part of that, if not all of it, is dedicated to the military. And of the military, it's for weapons. So what we have is a dramatic increase, or the likelihood of a dramatic increase in weapons made by the United States, sold by the United States, exported by the United States to people who Trump likes, which is very troubling. So can you comment on this technology and how it changes the paradigm?
Yeah, Jay. So now you have this. We were on the 4.5 generation fighter jets, and now we have moved into manufacturing of the fifth generation jets that come with artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, the advanced weapon systems, the AWS, and it's known as IOMT, that is Internet of Military Things, J. So that is connecting various military devices and systems for real data sharing and remote control of unmanned systems. So this brings a whole new dimension into a warfare where you have these machines which take over. And Jay, the advancement in these technologies gives you these there is space technology which has come in, which has orbital platforms and targeted energy weapons and kinetic bombardment systems, something like this Hollywood movie that we want to watch. It's coming to that point, Jay. And there was an incident when India showed its capability of space technology by destroying a decoy rogue satellite. So you can have space wars also going on. That is also a next season of warfare which will come up. And then you have the drones which are becoming more advanced. And first we had just the suicide drones of Shaheen of Iran, but now it's robotics and autonomous systems also coming in. You don't want soldiers' lives to go, and they might as well take remote controls and direct. We had the tunnels of Israel which were being policed by, or raked by these robots and machines. So that is coming, and you have this 5G data transfer today, which allows huge amounts of data to be transferred and exchanged. So warfare has gone several notches up, and you have the hypersonic missiles which travel at 20 times the speed of sound. So in that uh, you have three variants in hypersonic missiles. You have the guided ballistic missiles, the hypersonic cruise missiles, and the boost glide missiles. So these are 20 times the speed of light, J. Who the deployment and the reaching of the targets with precision is was going to set this technology several notches above what we have right now, Jay. And Jay, you have the RTX, which is a startup in the US. There's a high energy laser system which helps to target this swarm of drones. Now, the new style of attack, which even Ukraine did, like we discussed, was this swarming of drones, which overwhelms the traditionally defense systems, which are equipped for uh, a limited drone attack. You remember the Israel attack also? The Hamas overwhelmed the Iron Dome. So in the same way, the RTX is having a high energy laser system which is being developed.
Yeah, well, it's really no, it's scary. And we are manufacturing those things, and I think people should understand that in the model before, there was a few people in an air base, an Air Force base in Colorado, for example, with their hands on controls, and these controls would control drones anywhere in the world, and that was something, and they could fire on the enemy anywhere in the Middle East from sitting in their base in Colorado. But now it's autonomous, and you don't have to have that base in Colorado. You just program the drone or the weapon to go to a specific point, and you set it up so that it does the killing all by itself. And the only limitation on that, according to this segment on 60 Minutes, is there's a kill switch. You can stop the mission by just pressing a button, but you're not controlling the weapon. The weapon is being controlled by pre-programmed autonomous software. That's different. The other thing that's different is what you described, Roopmati, seems way ahead of what the US has. I mean, we have ships, lots of ships. We have carriers. We have fighter planes with pilots. Um, and we have all kinds of field weapons for the soldiers who are, put out there as boots on the ground. And I'm saying to myself, these weapons uh, make them irrelevant in many ways. You can sink a ship with one missile, a big ship. You can sink a carrier with one missile. You can knock down a fighter plane with appropriate missiles, air to air, all autonomous. And so, are we in the right place? Have we spent our money? Have we developed our weapons at the same speed as the technology would allow? Or are we behind the curve? Some commentators feel we are behind the curve, and we should not rely on trillion-dollar carriers with all those airplanes on them, which all require pilots. We should be focusing on these autonomous weapons instead.
Jay, the sophistication of these weapons reduces the deployment time. You know what was the time of space of reaction that we had between the US and Russia was 11 seconds in the Cold War time. Now we don't have the time. We don't, it's just a click of a button, which is a fraction of a second. And Jay, this technology has gone to that arena where you have a combination of various factors. It is land technology combined with your space surveillance, with your the actual ammunition also is very lethal, more lethal than it was. The warhead capability has increased several notches up. So you have these fighter jets now. The US fighter jets, Jay, they cost 120 million to make each one. So you imagine the amount of money defense spending that is taking place into this. They're also being sold. So somebody else is going to have the capability to do this. And Jay, when you see that you have these autonomous systems, robotics, artificial intelligence, all getting combined, and they are being overwhelmed by sometimes traditional or non. They have not taken these things into account that they would be attacked by such other weapons. It causes a back to the drawing board case, and they come up with new systems, new surveillance system, new defense systems. And Jay, I'll give you an example of this. India was the second largest arms importer in 2015 to 2019. And today it is in the top 25 exporter of arms. So you have this India Pakistan conflict which took place. India took 22 minutes, Jay, 22 minutes to destroy Pakistan's 11 air bases and 9 terrorist camps, just 22 minutes. And what was that? This was a showcase of India's military precision attack capability. And what happened after this, as we just spoke, it is an industry. You had a lineup of 17 countries waiting to buy Indian made missiles. So it is like a advertisement board for this, and Chinese missiles were falling. They sent around 600 drones and missiles. The Fateh 10 was sent towards Delhi. It dropped down into some village in Haryana without nobody. So Chinese defense capabilities, they degraded in their what is that, advertising abroad, Jay, and people have stopped buying it. India's got a lineup of defense um, export. So Jay, this every conflict is a showcase for this, and in this we are France's major importers. So the Rafale jet, which was bought by India, and during the war we needed the source code. Now, what is the source code? So that you can plant your own missiles into these uh, high generation, hi-fi fighter jets and shoot. But by denying the source code, India had to. It was a what is barrier to the attack, Jay. And so the next consignment will not be taken from France. It will probably go to Russia or America. Both of them offered the fifth generation fighter jets to India in place of the Rafale because France held back the source code. So you have so many technicalities in this entire warfare system, Jay. It's really mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's not only the source code; it's the spare parts.
Oh
So
yes.
you can sell them a whole bunch of weapons, but if you're holding back on the source code, or if you change the source code,
Hmm.
maybe even change the source code remotely and disable the source code you originally gave to a given importer of weapons, that stops it. And if you fail to give spare parts, every piece of equipment always has to be maintained and renewed. And if they can't get spare parts, they can't do it. So I think that's part of the weapons trade, isn't it?
Hmm.
That you want to retain control of the weapons you originally sold or gave to a given country. And I don't know if the U.S. does it. My guess is that the U.S. does do it, but you have these strings attached one way or the other, which is another extension projection of power, sort of a secondary level of the projection of power of giving weapons or selling weapons in the first place. You agree?
Yes, Jay. Yes, because that is something that you keep for your like a patent in technology, and they hold back this because if you get into all these countries are developing countries and they want to develop indigenous technology. So the moment they get these uh, weapons, they will kind of get into their own manufacturing. Now, BrahMos is a missile which is manufactured by Russia and India jointly. So it's a big industry, Jay. We are just touching the tip of the iceberg here. It's a big industry. There are collaborations and there is military might which is being combined, technological advancements that are being made. These satellite launches which take place every time, several of them are military capability, surveillance capability. They're just not weather satellites which are going up in space. And so we have a crowded spatial orbit also where you have all these satellites in place, and they're soon going to be uh, what do you say, satellite wars. It's just going to be that, Jay, because everybody knows what the other person is doing.
This takes us to telecommunications, I think.
Mm.
The Starlink is a weapon. Starlink is a weapon. If you remember, the Ukrainians were going to, use Starlink for navigational purposes when they made a certain attack in the Black Sea against the Russian ships. This goes back a couple of years ago. And Elon Musk, who controls Starlink, didn't want to see the Ukrainians make that attack. So he disabled Starlink for them. They couldn't use it all of a sudden without notice, and they had to cancel the attack, which I find that very troublesome. And if I find it very troublesome that the United States government, for better or worse, does not control Starlink, Elon Musk controls Starlink. And so what you have is a communication system that is definitely a weapon of war being controlled by a private individual and a private company. And somewhere along the line, we lost primacy in that. Don't you think that the US should have had its own Starlink so it could communicate with its own weapon systems? It doesn't. it has to rely on these guys who are not particularly reliable for those communication systems. So, communications are a weapon. And remember, the Israelis had these exploding pagers, remember, a year ago? And the Israelis have this special software that propagates on cell phones and can listen to your conversations, whether your cell phone is off or not. I mean, there's all these all these hacking type technologies that are useful, if not critical, as weapons in a time of war in a theater of conflict. Don't you consider those things weapons also?
Yeah, Jay, they're like, technology can really penetrate into each and every aspect of your. There's no limit on this, Jay. That's the problem, that you can attack at several levels. And so when they attacked the pages, it was in the hands of every person, and Hamas thought that they could bypass. Hamas Hezbollah thought they could bypass and have this technology where they could message each other without being detected by Israel. And when they got caught, uh, they had no answer to this. So it's something like a game of chess. Each one is trying to checkmate the other with asymmetrical methods of warfare. So, like in the olden days, gunpowder, your might of your armies would be tackled with guerrilla warfare. It's something like that. A sophisticated aircraft carrier, like you say, can be um, destroyed with a missile, drone, anything. So now this Ukraine attack itself, 7 billion destroyed by few dollars of drones, small drones. You see the footage when they're coming out of the trucks. They're like little bees which come out, and that could destroy 1/3 of Russia's aviation fleet. Was a stunner, Jay. So this kind of makes the dynamics of uh, warfare even more interesting when you see this.
Yeah, October 7th included these gliders. Remember, I think Iran provided Hamas with the technology for those gliders. But see how far we've come. October 7th is what? Not quite 2 years ago, 600 days ago. And would anyone try gliders again today? I don't think so, because they could be shot down so easily by drones. And so see how quickly it moves. In a year or two, we're in a completely different place. And some of the fighter jets off the Truman, for example, have been shot down by the Yemenis, who are, not technologically oriented at all. They got their technology elsewhere, which raises the question of how do these weapons move? We talked about how the U.S., is exporting 43% of the weapons that are exported in the world. That is something. But the U.S. is a country. It's a nation state, presumably responsible. I'm not sure how responsible under the Trump administration, but presumably responsible. Now you have terrorist organizations, and you have Iran, which uses proxies, and these weapons can just as easily fall into the hands of terrorists. We know, in fact, that they have. Um, and for that matter, rogue states like Iran itself, nuclear parts have gone to Iran from various places and countries. So there's two levels here. One is the, call it, legitimate transfers, exports by nation states that have some degree of responsibility, and you have the undercurrent of the transfer, the export, import of weapons, sometimes just as good, just as high tech, just as lethal to terrorist organizations and rogue states. So, how can we keep track of this? The media has tremendous amount of trouble keeping track of even the legitimate transfers, much less the transfers for terrorists. Some say that you have to follow the money. If you follow them, if you have the intelligence to follow the money, you can figure out where the weapons are going. But isn't this a big problem? Because as we export more weapons, more of them are falling out of the back of the truck, so to speak, and they're getting caught in the transfer of weapons to organizations and rogue states.
Yeah, Jay, it's like the gun control thing. We cannot control how many guns a individual owns or how many guns he can illegally have. Same thing with the countries that, you have these rogue countries like Pakistan. They sold the entire ammunition to Ukraine for money. They're even capable of selling it to Iran for nuclear parts, which is a short thing that they will sell it to Iran. They need the money. Like you said, money plays a big part in all this. And a nuclear weapon, like a suicide bomber, has nothing but a belt tied to his waist, which can destroy property and many, many lives. The same thing with weapons in the hands of these rogue countries. One small weapon can destroy so much more than what a responsible country with big weapons would not. America and Russia had weapons enough to destroy the planet several times over. But how many times have they used it? How many times have they put the nuclear weapons into use? They're still using those drones. They're attacking, uh, to a limit. There's the clause of not using long range missiles with Ukraine and Russia too. So there is a kind of a responsibility that comes in with the sensible, rational players. Now, what happens with the illogical terrorist groups? They have no rational, they have no care for humanity, no, they have nothing to do for the future. So they will destroy with the blind eye. And that blind eye is what is the most dangerous part of this flooding of weapons in the market. Because when we go for the fifth generation, what happens to the third generation, second generation uh, weaponry? It falls into desolate, and that can fall into the hands of these rogue people. Taliban, Jay, you've seen the footage. All of them have these weapons or these um, material things which the US has left behind, and it's of no use to the US. But for them, it's a whole new ball game, Jay.
You mentioned nuclear, and that is certainly the 800-pound gorilla here in our conversation. Now we know that Iran is only a few weeks away from having bombs, and the news reported that Trump had made an offer of non-proliferation, a renewal of the non-proliferation agreement with Iran. But his offer said that they could, to a limited degree, continue their refinement, which is very troubling. I mean, I thought he was going to say, no, you can't do that at all. But he's saying you can do that in part. Oh my goodness gracious, they're still going to do it, even under Trump's proposal. Now, one thing that troubles me is as I mentioned before, Iran had to get parts as well as scientists from other countries. And it just remembered that the Stuxnet virus that Israel developed with Obama back in the 2000s, which delayed Iran's development of the bomb by spinning the centrifuges at high speed and shattering them because of that high speed, was focused on Siemens controllers. Now, Siemens is a German company. Somehow, the Siemens controllers got to be a core element in their efforts to refine the uranium. And so what you have clearly there is a German company is providing parts to help them build the bomb. How many other countries in Europe, and for that matter, in the US, possibly Asia, possibly China, have provided those parts to Iran to support and accelerate its development of the bomb? And furthermore, North Korea has the bomb. North Korea would be happy to share its information, its parts, its technology with other rogue countries, just to do disruption in the world. So I think nuclear is a real possibility. Remember that only a few weeks ago, Putin said he had developed a nuclear tactical weapon that could be shot from a plane and toward another plane. It was a limited nuclear tactical weapon. I said, my goodness, if he does that, it's going to change the name of the game. We have all heard it too many times that nuclear weapons are their own deterrent. Nobody wants to fire the first shot because it would mean a nuclear conflagration. But there are some crazy leaders in the world. You can quote me on that, Roopmati, There are some oligarchs in the world that are really unhinged, and they might fire the first weapon. And from this discussion, it would take nanoseconds before a global conflagration took place all around the world with all kinds of weapons. So I do worry about nuclear. You can't control an unhinged dictator, but there are those people out there, and they could start a nuclear war with the weapons that are now in play. Furthermore, from what Putin said, nuclear research is going on as we speak. This new weapon he is designing, or maybe he bought from somebody else, is an advanced nuclear weapon, a tactical battlefield, um, uh, airborne weapon. And so we cannot assume that the nuclear bombs are the same as they were. The bombs that blew up in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we'll be celebrating or memorializing that in August, this year as the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombs in Japan, were built with 15 kilograms of uranium. That's what, 30 pounds, 35 pounds. The ones that are built today are like 1,500 kilograms of, nuclear material. You can imagine how much more damage they can do. So the research goes on, and we cannot assume that what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki would be the same phenomenon as what would happen today.
Yeah, Jay, is in a nuclear war there will be no winners, and that is a fact that was laid down long time back. And rogue hands, there can be none less than Iran, because they have declared that they want a nuclear weapon to wipe Israel off the map. We can't underscore that line less, Jay. It is a declared policy, foreign policy of Iran to use that weapon, nuclear weapon, to destroy Israel. So, to allow enrichment of uranium to that extent that they can develop a nuclear weapon will be one of the biggest mistakes of Trump's presidency. And it will be a lethal blow to Israel, and Israel will have to really take matters into their own hands at that point of time for self-defense. That will be a new story in the making, because at that time it will be survive or perish. It will be that point. And Jay, this nuclear weapons, like you mentioned, 15 grams to now several hundred of them in several different countries. Uh, where is this leading to, and how much control can they have, is what is going to matter in the coming years. And to spend that amount of your budget for nuclear capability on weapon upgradation is what is on the country's priorities right now. Because, Jay, you've seen that these conflicts have spillover effects. So, Ukraine Russia war has spilled over, in which Britain and France are waiting to get into the war. And once they get into the war, NATO will have to come in. And France is they're having a pooling of the weapons for a EU collective security system apart from NATO, and France is offering the nuclear warheads for this collective pool. So you have these countries which are taking the initiative, but are they the dominant powers today to be able to do that? Does France have that capability? It is just exporting to India. It is not exporting to many other countries, or it doesn't have that much of a sophisticated technological um, hold like like the US or Russia. Jay.
Okay, for what we've decided here, I think that right now we have a lot of dynamic going on in research and innovation in weapons.
Mm.
We have weapons that are more autonomous than before, more powerful, more lethal than before. That there's more weapons trade going on in the world today. Even though global trade is down, the weapons trade is not down.
That's true.
And then there's two levels of weapons trade. One is the trade between nation states, and the other is the underground trade, if you will, to terrorist organizations or anybody who has the money.
Mm.
I was talking to you before about Robert Tuckman and the Guns of August, and it stands for the proposition that the more weapons that are out there, the more likely there will be a war, accidental or intentional, just as World War One was indeed. So, where are we going on this? Is it going to get faster, more lethal? Is it going to change the balance of power? Power comes from the muzzle of a gun, they say. And if you have more weapons, you're more powerful. And that certainly is so when you think about Trump selling $1 trillion of weapons to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and United Arab Emirates. And so those countries are more powerful because they have the weapons. It changes the balance of power, doesn't it? And
Yes,
so, where are we going with this? What is it going to look like in 5 years? I mean, if there is 5 years left.
yeah, Jay. The weaponization of these areas is going to change power dynamics and global politics in that uh, with the same speed at which they are weaponizing themselves. And Jay, when you have these conflicts, when you have these big nations struggling to, like the US is struggling with the Houthis, Israel is struggling with Hezbollah, Hamas, India is struggling with a small failed state like Pakistan, China is struggling with their Taiwan issue. So you have these big powers, even if they have so many weapons, to struggle with it, because to use them, when to use them is the question that they have. And to not use them puts them in the space of being a deterrent, that they just intimidate their opponent, that if you attack me, I would use these weapons. But what happens, Jay, when you just use it as a deterrent and the smaller power or the smaller entity attacks you? What do you do then? Now, take the example of Ukraine. Ukraine has attacked Russia. Russia has got nuclear weapons enough to destroy that entire section over and over and over again. But it cannot take the decision to use a nuclear weapon. So, where does your entire arsenal stand? When do you use your weapon? When do you at how much do you use your nuclear capability? All these questions so what you amassed for all this time, it just lies in your storage, isn't it, Jay? So Ukraine has come and put four containers next to five airports and destroyed 7 billion, one third of Russia's capability. Russia's nuclear weapons unused.
Yeah, okay, so far. And what I find interesting is how much detail we have over what Ukraine did. And there's always the possibility of copycat, isn't there? Somebody else could take those photographs and take what we know about Ukraine's innovations and repeat them either against Ukraine or against somebody else. But here's my final question for you, Rupmati. I think there's two reasons why we don't know as much about this as perhaps we should. Number one is a lot of it is classified, right? It's below the surface. It's below the surface both on the nation state transfers, exports, and certainly the black market transfers. So it's not easy to find out about it. It's kept secret. Um, and therefore, the media hasn't really covered it or been able to cover it. And so all we have is a smattering information that essentially terrifies people, and including national leaders. Like Joe Biden was always so afraid when Putin would rattle his nuclear saber that he would back off from helping supplying weapons to Ukraine. But I wonder if the press is doing the right thing. I wonder if the press shouldn't spend more time trying to figure out what's moving where and who's moving it where and what the newest capabilities are. I thought the 60 Minutes segment was valuable in the sense that we now understand what the cutting edge is. Should we be advised of that, or does that just create a panic?
Jay, most of the defense budgets of all the nations are put under R&D, research and development. So we don't have a overt observation of what is the defense spending. And Jay, there is a IPSO, that is the Information Psychological Operation, which is taken place by all this media and the government and everything to influence people to believe what they want to, like a propaganda or spreading of information. So we believe what we are shown, and we are shown filtered information. So that kind of is also one of the operations that they have, that they only give you that much information that you can take. Do we know what is happening? Do we know which companies are being used? There can be several industries which are set up, but they will be manufacturing parts of a drone, or parts of a tank, or parts of an aeroplane, but it'll look like it's an automobile industry. So we don't know this. It is a second tier of the government which functions, and every country has it. And so that's why, Jay, we stay in the dark. And then when you see these innovations, you're stunned that what happens. So many theories, conspiracy theories, also of that spacecraft, alien spacecrafts were taken for investigation, and then we are trying to ape those technologies into our current technologies. We're trying to put these high fifth generation aircraft which are coming in. They are very, very sophisticated. They escape radars, they escape their stealth technology which comes in. The bombers which are there, Jay, they are uh, the takeoff, the vertical takeoff bombers. Have you seen those aircraft which you don't need a aircraft carrier or anything? So this kind of sophistication is really overwhelming for the public, and I don't think if you give the public the fodder, there'll be several issues where the public will say why you need a section which will say why do you need spending so much on money. You'll have all these use and cry, but a country's aim always is to protect itself. And Jay, it is undeniable that if you want to have a voice in the global system, you have to become more powerful. No second thoughts about that, Jay.
Yeah. So interesting, so informative. There's so much more, but we'll have to leave it there for now. Thanks so much to our guest, Dr. Roopmati Khandekar, geopolitical analyst here on ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidell, host of Global Connections, and we've been engaging on who are the weapons suppliers of today's troubled world. Thanks to our viewers for watching. We'll see you again soon for the next one. Aloha. Aloha, Roopmati.
Aloha, Jay. Thank you so very much.